Hello guys, you're welcome back to Slick Academics. In today's class, we shall be discussing glycolysis. Glycolysis is a chemical reaction which involves the breaking down of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, to pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon molecule. This is essential in the body in order to produce energy. So we quickly go into the processes involved in glycolysis. The first step in glycolysis is phosphorylation of the glucose molecule. Phosphorylation simply means addition of phosphate. This is done by taking the phosphate from the ATP, which is the body's form of energy. ATP simply means adenosine triphosphate. And when we take this phosphate from it, it gives rise to what we call ADP, that means adenosine diphosphate, meaning we have reduced the phosphate group from 3, that is triphosphate, to 2, that is diphosphate. And this process is overseen by an enzyme known as hexokinase. Hexo simply means 6 carbon, which is what the glucose is made of, and kinase is a group of enzymes that oversees the loss or gain of phosphorus. So after the phosphorylation of the glucose molecule through the hexokinase enzyme, we now give rise to what we call glucose 6 phosphate, meaning that the phosphate group was added to the 6th carbon of the glucose molecule. Due to the phosphorylation, it means that the body is spending energy in the process of trying to produce energy. Just like the old saying that you spend money to get money. Now we go to the second stage where the glucose 6 phosphate is further converted to fructose 6 phosphate, and this is overseen by an enzyme known as phosphoglucose isomerase, meaning glucose 6 phosphate and fructose 6 phosphate are the same 6 carbon. The only difference is a little bit of arrangement. So phosphoglucose isomerase, the enzyme, oversees the rearrangement of glucose 6 phosphate to fructose 6 phosphate. After the conversion to fructose 6 phosphate, the third stage of the reaction sees the body further spending more energy in the form of ATP by phosphorylating further fructose 6 phosphate, that is adding an extra phosphate group, giving rise to what we call fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, and this is overseen by an enzyme known as phosphofructokinase. Fructose 1,6 bisphosphate simply means that out of the 6 carbons of the fructose, one phosphate group is on the first carbon and another phosphate group is on the 6th carbon. And bisphosphate simply means they are not close to each other. Now, fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, a 6-carbon molecule which is unstable, can now be divided into 2 equal halves of 3-carbon molecules by an enzyme known as aldolase, and it will give rise to a 3-carbon molecule known as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and the hydroxyacetone phosphate. Both are 3-carbon molecules. These two molecules can interchange between each other, but predominantly the hydroxyacetone phosphate is always converted to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and this is overseen by an enzyme known as isomerase. Now that we have two of these molecules, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, after the hydroxyacetone phosphate had converted to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, it is further converted to 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate by an enzyme known as triose phosphate dehydrogenase. This is achieved by NAD+, known as nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, further stealing electrons, that is getting reduced from NAD plus to NADH. Remember, we now have 2-glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which is why we have 2 NAD plus being reduced to 2 NADH and 2 hydrogen atoms. Now, the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is further converted to 3-phosphoglycerate by the enzyme phosphoglycerokinase. In this case, the body is no longer spending energy, the body has begun to produce energy because the phosphate group on the first carbon of the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate has been removed to form ATP. Now, at this point, a little bit of rearrangement is done. The 3-phosphoglycerates will now be rearranged to 2-phosphoglycerates. That is, the phosphate group has been removed from the third carbon to the second carbon of the molecule, and this is overseen by the enzyme phosphoglyceromutase. Furthermore, the 2-phosphoglycerate molecule is also converted to phosphoenol pyruvate by an enzyme known as enolase. This is achieved by an introduction of an oxygen group to the molecule. Finally, the phosphoenol pyruvate is further converted to pyruvate by an enzyme known as pyruvate kinase. At this point, the body also further produces energy by removing a phosphate group to produce ATP. The pyruvate produced is a precursor to movement into the Krebs cycle, where majority of the energy used up in the body cells are produced. Thank you for joining us in this particular class, and make sure to follow us on all our social media handles. And if you have any questions or contributions, we would like to hear from you. Thank you and stay blessed.